Hello once again, guys. I'm welcoming you again to the second session of today's lesson, and well, we're going to be looking at an honor, which is the second lesson of friend class, which is known as spiritual discovery. So once again, I'm just going to require you to have your pen and your paper there and note down each and every nitty-gritty that I'm going to give out today. Okay, so we're going to be looking at spiritual discovery. Okay, now what is a spiritual discovery? Okay, so spiritual discovery is an honor, yes, that we learn in the Pathfinder ministry, specifically friend class. Yes, the second lesson of friend class. And well, it basically helps us with spiritual growth. Okay, it helps us with knowing God through the Bible. Okay, it gives us certain key points which we can use when we want to know God. That is through the Bible. Now, interesting facts about the Bible. Well, but of course, the Bible. I want you to write this down. The Bible in Greek is Biblos. Okay, the Greek word for Bible is Biblos. Biblos spelled as Biblos. Okay, so those are some of the interesting facts. Then we also have scripture. Okay, scripture in Latin is scriptura. Scriptura. Okay, scriptura spelled as Scriptura. Okay, so just make sure that you write those down because those are very, very important. Now, okay, so let us go into our lesson. The Bible. Okay, so we know that the Bible, yes, has got two sections, and those are the Old and the New Testament, yes, and well, we know that the Bible collectively has got 66 books, yes, and we're going to start with the Old Testament. Okay, so the Old Testament, well, the Old Testament has got about It's got five divisions through which different books are categorized. Okay, so they're categorized according to who wrote them and what they wrote about and what they wrote about and what not. So that's how the Bible in the Old Testament and as well as the New Testament are grouped. But right now we're going to specifically look at the Old Testament. So what we're going to do before we begin our lesson, I'm going to want to have you memorize the books of the Old Testament. But we might as well just say the books of the Bible, because sooner or later you're going to have to know the books of the New Testament as well. So I want you to memorize the books of the Bible. Okay, I want you to know them, because it is not only for Pathfinder that it's not only for the sake of Pathfinder that you're going to have to learn the books of the Bible, but also individually. Okay, because it's going to help you know which book comes after what, and all those things. Okay, it's going to help you know more about your God by knowing which book is exactly. Okay, so divisions of the Old Testament. Now, the books of the Old Testament, like I said earlier, has got about 5 divisions. Okay, it's got 4, but then the last division has got 2 divisions. It's got 2 subdivisions. So we might as well just say it's got 5 divisions. Okay, so the major divisions of the books of the Old Testament are books of law, books of history, books of poetry, and books of prophets. Okay, books of law, books of history, books of poetry, and books of prophets. Now, in the books of law, we find the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, why are these books known as the books of law? It's because one way or another, the books have got something that God instructed us, something that He gave us instructions in those 5 books. That is why they're referred to as books of law. It's because God has given us instructions which we might as well call as a law. Okay, same way we said in the previous video that every organization has certain rules and regulations to make sure that the organization flows clearly and smoothly. So the same way, the Bible has the books of law which God gave us to ensure that that the instructions are well put. Okay, so the instructions that God gave to us are in the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The second grouping, division of the books of the Old Testament, are the books of history. Now, the books of history go from Joshua up to Esther. Okay, so we've got Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. Okay, so Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Israel, and Nehemiah. Books of history. Now, what are the books of history? So just like you know how we define history, okay, these are events that happened in the past, okay, the past events. So the books of history and the books that are under the books of history, or the books of history, yeah, these are just a highlight. Okay, they tell us about the events that happened in the past. Remember, this is the Old Testament we're talking about, guys. So the books of history basically tell us what happened in the past. We look at people like Joshua. Okay, Joshua is in the book of history because he's going to tell us what happened when he went to fight when he went around the walls of Jericho. Okay, he didn't write the book when he was going around the walls of Jericho. No, he wrote them after they happened. So because he wrote them after they happened, that means the events were history, and that's how books like Joshua fall under the books of history. Next, we've got the books of poetry. Okay, books of poetry where we have people like Job, we've got people like Psalm, we've got people like we've got books like Proverbs, we've got books like Ecclesiastes. Okay, so what are these books about? Well, books of poetry, we know that poetry is an art. Okay, poetry is an art that people often use to express emotions, maybe towards something, towards certain people. I mean, look at people like William Shakespeare. Okay, Shakespeare used poetry to show love to his friends and to his family. Okay, so the same way, the books of poetry also show love. It might be to an individual, but then it might also be to God. So they show love. They talk about different things, most of which are about God. So books of poetry are just books that put so much emphasis, mostly about God. Okay, so that's how I find people like Sam singing songs. Okay, sometimes he'd be there composing a poem. Okay, then he'd write it down because it's talking about God. Okay, so that's what it is about the books of poetry. Then the last division of the books of the Old Testament that I said has got two subdivisions. Okay, it's a book of the books of prophets. Now, what do we mean by the books? Okay, so the books of prophets have got two divisions. Like I said, they are what we call minor and major prophets. Okay, some of the major prophets. Okay, some of the major prophets that we have are Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. What do we mean by major prophets? Major prophets are those that you could say appeared most in the Old Testament. Okay, then minor prophets. Some of the minor prophets are people from Hosea, Hosea all the way to Malachi, so I'm just going to mention them, run through them real quick. Okay, so what the books of the minor prophets are: we've got Hosea, we've got Joel, we've got Amos, we've got Obadiah, we've got Micah, Nahum, then we've got Habakkuk, we've got Zephaniah, we've got Haggai, we've got Zechariah, and we've got Malachi. So these together are what are known as the books of the Old Testament. Remember, the books of the Old Testament have got 4 divisions, with the last division subdivided into 2 divisions, which you might as well just say the Old Testament has got 5 divisions. Okay, so we've got the books of law, the books of history, books of poetry, and books of prophets. So let's say them all together, okay, so that we know the order in which they stand. Okay, so we've got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, okay, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. So those are basically the books of the Old Testament. Now we're going to be looking at the books of the New Testament, and similarly, if you've got any questions, about the books of the if you've got any questions about the books of the Old Testament, you just do good to leave the questions in the comment section below. Now, the books of the New Testament. Now we know that the New Testament was a period after God had come. Okay, so the people of the New Testament, they saw God. People of the Old Testament only used to hear Him from prophets and such people that were inspired by God. That's how people of the Old Testament heard about God. Okay, unless people like people like Adam and Eve. Okay, those are the only people that probably saw God, but everyone else just heard about God from prophets and whatnot. So the people of the books of the the New Testament, these guys were privileged to have God, so they had God. Now, also the New Testament has got divisions. The divisions are about 4. Yes, okay, they are 4, and we will name them. The divisions of the New Testament. We have the books of biography, we've got the books of history, then we've got the books of letters, and we've got the books of prophecy. Okay, so these are the basic divisions of the books of the New Testament. Now, the books of biography, we've got the first 4 books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, the books of biography basically tell us about the character of Christ. That's what the books of biography basically, because remember, God came in the New Testament, so these guys were trying to give us a picture. I mean, they're trying to portray the character of Christ through Scripture, so that even us, as we are, we're not seeing Christ, but then we know His character. Why, how? It's because of the books of biography. Okay, so then we have the books of history. Now, Acts is the only book of history. Why? Because it's got certain components of history in it. Okay, now you realize that in the Old Testament we had quite a number of books of history, but in the New Testament, Acts is the only book that has history in it, recorded history in it. Okay, and then books of letters. Okay, books of letters go all the way from Romans to Jude. Okay, so we've got 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. Then we've got Jude. Those are the letters. Okay, well, letters, these were written to people. Okay, these were books that were written to people. So you find things like the person writing to a king. Okay, such conversations you might find them in the books of letters. Okay, so remember, they go all the way from Romans and to Jude, and this is the biggest division the Bible has. It's the division with the most books in the Bible. Okay, then lastly we've got the books of prophecy. The books of prophecy, well, yes, we've got Revelation. Now, the books of prophecy basically tell us about things that are yet to happen. Okay, things that are prophesied. Things that are prophesied. That's what the books of prophecy are about. So these all together make up the books of the Bible. Okay, Biblos, as Greek tells us, that is the Biblos. Okay, so I'm quickly going to show you the importance of knowing the books of the Bible in their order, because remember, just like counting, there's never such a time when you skip a number. Okay, say from 1 you skip to 3 without counting 2. Okay, unless, well, of course you're counting in threes, but if it's a normal count and then you skip from 1 to 3, I think there must be something wrong. Okay, so the same way, it is important to know which book comes after what and before what. The same way we know that 5 is a number that is after 6, that's a number that is before 6 and after 4. Okay, so that's the same way we're supposed to know that Luke is a book that is before John but after Mark. Okay, so very quickly, I am going to show you. I'm going to show you what the importance of looking for of learning the outline of the Bible is. So, looking at our devotional guide, remember Psalm 139. Yeah, Psalm 139. Let's go there. So you know that the book of Psalm. Give me a second. You know that the book of Psalm is before Proverbs but after Job. So you won't start looking for it in the first 5 books, okay? You will skip a couple of books or so that you can know which book comes before or after Psalm. So in this situation, the book of Psalm comes before Proverbs but after Job. So you look for your Proverbs there, or you look for your Job. Then you definitely know that the book that is in between is Psalm. Okay, so I have found my Psalm. So we have Psalm chapter 139. Okay, so that right there is Psalm. Okay, so what the importance of learning this, like I alluded to, I'm going to keep repeating it so it should sink into our minds. Okay, the importance of learning the outline of the Bible is to help us grow spiritually. Okay, is to help us have a better relationship with our God. Okay, it would help us more than it would help God. Because think about it, everything that God does, it's out of His love. Remember, His love compels us. Okay, so it's everything that He does, it's for our own good. And so each and everything that God gives us, each and everything that God's laid for us, even in the books of law, it's only for our own good. And so we should make sure that each and every time we have that we keep that morning watch. Okay, we make sure that we master a verse or two. But then again, don't forget what I told you to do. Make sure that you know actually. Don't master them, know the books of the Bible, know them by heart. Okay, so even if someone woke you up directly from sleep and asks you which book comes before what, you'd be able to answer. That is the importance of knowing the Bible, so we can have a better relationship with God. Now today, guys, that was all that I had for you. That was all that I had for a lesson today, and I just want to thank you once again for joining me in today's session. Okay, I know it's not easy staying home, but that's the best thing that you can do right now to protect yourself and to protect your family. So continue washing your hands frequently and stay home, avoid unnecessary movements, and make sure that you're studying for school as well. Okay, make sure you're studying for school, make sure you're studying for church, and hope for the best. Just keep praying for the country and keep praying for the world at large. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I will attend to them as soon as possible, and God bless you. Thank you.